What is up guys, it's XX Motherboard for XX Gamertag Banjo Chicken, and welcome back to another PC building video. So part one of this video, which I'll put a link to on screen now, you can go click that. That video goes through the process of ordering all the different parts and making sure they'll all work with each other and they're all compatible, and primarily a gaming system. This is a budget PC build, not a really overkill expensive build. This is for somebody on a budget, a friend of mine that I'll be shipping this computer to once it's done. And his budget is about £500, so and that's not including postage, so £500 for the whole build. I think we managed to get it just under that, or around about that, with all the components, and it's primarily for gaming, guys, primarily for gaming. So we've got all the components set up for gaming, rather than anything else. So we've got all the components here. Like I say, part one, go click that if you want to find out why I chose all these components. But quick run through here. We've got our motherboard, M5A78L-M from Asus. Our power supply is a basic CIT power supply. I'd probably recommend going for maybe a higher quality type power supply at a lower wattage, whereas this one's kind of a lower quality power supply at a higher wattage, which isn't recommended. But I've never had a problem with this power supply before, surprisingly. So yeah, I mean, they get bad names from people, but for me, I've never had a problem with it. Then we've got the processor, which is the one we ordered. The packaging on it looks a bit different, but it is the same one. It's the FX 6300. So it's a 6-core AMD processor. We've got our RAM back there. That's 8 GB of Corsair Vengeance RAM. And we've got our graphics card, R7870 Double Dissipation Edition, because it was on sale on scan.co.uk. And it's the gigahertz edition with the dual fans for better cooling, and it's genuinely a really great card. I've had one in my old system for a while and it's performed great for me. Then for storage, we have a typical 1TB drive, Seagate Barracuda 1TB. Then for the operating system, we're going to be sticking it on this 120GB Kingston SSD. And that's it. So, oh, and the case, of course, is just a basic cheap gaming case. Rather, kind of wanted to put most of the money into the components, because that's where the performance is in the components, obviously. So haven't gone overboard on the case. I've gone very, very cheap on the case, which means the cable management is terrible on this case. It is terrible. But because there's no window on it, I'm not too bothered with it. We can use cable ties and some other stuff to try and tidy the cables up in there, because there's really not much cable management space at the back at all. But we'll do our best with what we've got. So yeah, £500. I think this is going to make a pretty awesome computer, and in the next video we will be installing the operating system and testing it out on games and stuff and seeing how well it performs. So let's go ahead and start the build. Alright guys, here we go. So first step, installing the processor is always really the first step. So we've got this little lever that we just pull up, and then we grab our processor here, being very careful not to damage any of the pins on the bottom. And here's our processor. It's quite large actually. I mean, I've never actually used an AMD processor before. I noticed they are quite a bit bigger than the Intel chips. So yeah, so basically what we have, and then right there we've got the gold arrow, and you've got to match that up with a little arrow which is on the corner of the socket. So you just line that up and you should be good. So let's connect, pop that in, and I think we're good there. Yep. So then the lever comes down and just tucks in underneath like so, and our processor is secure. Really that easy for processor installation. But next we have to install our heatsink. Now if you don't have thermal paste on the heatsink, then you would get a little tube of thermal compound like Arctic 5, put a little drop or a small line in the middle, and then you pop your heatsink on. This heatsink already has thermal paste because it's the stock heatsink that comes with the processor. It's already got a layer of thermal paste on there. So we're just going to go ahead and plonk this on. So go around this way. Install this. Got a couple clips here that are going to clip on each end. So, oh, right. So we go along this way here, and then it locks in. So that's actually quite a basic, simple way of installing that. So you know it's firmly secure when you can lift the board up by the heatsink. So we know that that's in. So next we have to plug in the fan. The fan header is right there. There you go, right there. So we'll just go ahead and plug the fan on right now. So there we go. Fan is attached, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Move these wires, and we'll go ahead and install RAM. So switch this over, install the RAM. So here's our RAM. What we're going to do is install this on here. So you've got to go for the color coded ones. So you could either go for the 2 blacks or the 2 blues, if you have 2 strips, that is. And you just plug it in, well, slot it in. So we'll just slap this, bring that forward. So we just slot the RAM in here, push down on one end, make sure it's clipped, and then push down on the other end, making sure that it is even on both sides and it is plugged in properly, which it would appear to be. And that was the blue slot that I plugged it into, so on this one we will go ahead and stick the next one in a blue slot as well. So we've got that on that end, push it in on that end. Just check to make sure it is firmly in place. It seems to be fine. And that's RAM, really basic. So we've got our CPU, we've got our RAM installed. So next we will go ahead and install the power supply into the machine and then the motherboard. That's just the way I like to do it. You could do it the other way around if you want, but I'm going to slap in the power supply first and then we'll pop in the motherboard afterwards. Okay guys, so power supply installation. Pretty basic. You want the fan facing out the way, obviously, so that better airflow and all that. You don't want it pointing towards that. But if you have something like a fan filter or vent or holes or something for air to escape, then you can mount it the other way round. But it's obvious by this case that you're meant to mount it with the fan facing in the way towards the motherboard and everything else. So it literally just slaps in, and that would pretty much be it, I believe. Mounts up the way a bit, so like that. And all I have to do now is go ahead and install the screws. Once I've done that, we can go ahead and move on. Alright guys, it's IO shield time once again. So here's our IO shield for the motherboard. Just determine, look at the motherboard, match it up, maybe sit the motherboard in the case first off, so you know what way round all of this stuff is going to go. So it pushes right up, and use a bit of force. Use a bit of force there to get it in, but I think, yeah, I think that's in correctly now. So that's our motherboard IO shield. Once we have the IO shield in, I've got all the components around the back of the system so that there's room to put it in, put the motherboard in. We've got, if we have a look, these. So you've got these mounts. So what I'd do is put the motherboard in first, determine where everything's going to go, then attach your IO shield, then screw in your mounts in the correct places, and then you'll be ready to put the motherboard in. Alright guys, so now it is well and truly time to put the motherboard in. So I've got my mounts in there, got everything else in there, got the cables out of the way. Just gonna turn my motherboard around, slap it in. So the way we're going to put it in is towards the IO shield at an angle like this, and we're just gonna probably grab the heatsink to do this. be the best way. When you're trying to put it in with your I/O shield in the way, it can be a bit annoying, but got it in there. Then you've got to match up the screw holes and screw it in basically. So once the motherboard's in, all we got to do now is screw it in. So usually on an ATX board you'll have 3 screws at the top here, another 3 screws in the middle, and another 3 screws at the bottom. This one's a UATX motherboard, it's quite a smaller motherboard. It's only got 2 screw holes, actually 1 at the bottom and then 1 sort of off at an angle, which is a bit weird, but yeah, or you could say it's only got 2 at the bottom and then 3 in the middle and 3 at the top. But we go ahead and we'll screw it in, and I'll be back with you guys once I've got it all screwed in, and we'll be ready to proceed. Okay, we've got our hard drive to install, really pretty basic Seagate Barracuda 1000 gigabyte drive, so a terabyte. The hard drive bay is just here, so it's a simple case of slapping it in really, nothing more. I'm going to put it on the top bay because that way it's going to be, when I'm running the cables, try to get the cables at the back if I can, because there's not much cable management room, so it'll be easier for them to stretch to this one than the bottom one, especially if you've got one of those SATA connectors that kind of clip on and it's not a direct one, it kind of, the cable comes out of the bottom, which would be really awkward on the bottom drive. So that's where we're slotting it into the top drive here. Then we've got screws, 2 screws here to secure it in place. Exactly the same on the other side, 2 screws to secure it in place. And then that'll be the hard drive installed, and we'll have to go ahead and hook up the power and the data cables for that once that is screwed in. Okay guys, so I've got my SSD unpacked here. What we're going to do, it comes with this, I don't even know, this kind of holder thing, protective thing. I have no idea what it is, but it's meant to go on, so it's got a little sticky strap. So we just slap that on there. Would it be to protect it or just give it more, oh, just be to give it more thickness, I guess, to fit into SSD holders or something, I don't know. But there are no SSD holders in this case, by the way, but you know, to be honest, you can mount it anywhere. I could slap it right there and just stick it down with tape and it would be absolutely fine. The thing about SSDs is there are no moving parts. They are literally, they're not mechanical. There are no moving parts whatsoever, so it does not matter where you put them. But I think because there's enough room right there in the hard drive cage that I may just stick it on there. Like that maybe. Just there, so it will be on top of the hard drive, so that the SATA cables will be in the hard drive and then another 2 in there to the SSD. Okay guys, so basically I've got the power cables coming through now from the back, and I have the SSD taped to the top of the hard drive. So with the bottom power cable, I'm going to plug that into the hard drive just like that. And with the top power cable, we'll plug that into the SSD just here. Make sure that's solidly connected. And next we need another SATA cable for the SSD now. A data cable for the SSD. We've got the hard drive one connected already. So we'll plug this one in. You can see the SATA port, so we'll just plug this into the next SATA port. That's that. Okay, so that is it. We are connected. Our hard drive and our SSD are connected. And our next step, I guess, will be to plug everything else in. I usually put in the graphics card last because it can get in the way of other things. So what we'll do at the moment is thread through some of the cables, because there are more cables that are part of the case itself. Some of them are for USB, that one's for audio because there's headphone jack on the top. We've got the power and reset switches, hard drive LED, USB as well. So we've got all of that to connect to the motherboard. that all connects to this little panel here. Now, in order to find out which way they go, I recommend the motherboard manual, because it will say on it somewhere, like right here. If you can see that, if it will focus. Focus please, there we go. So you can see it tells you where everything is meant to go on that panel. So definitely consult the motherboard manual for that. Well, they're labelled, so go ahead and connect that first of all to the first pin. And that is power LED plus, and then you've got minus here, which goes on the pin next to it, which is very hard to get on. There we go. So that's power LED. So that one goes on underneath, which is our hard drive. Then we've got power switch. Power switch goes on to this middle one. I believe, yep. That should be power. Should be power attached. And lastly, we have got the reset switch, which goes on right next to the power switch. Now it may be different for your in fact it will be different for your motherboard unless you've got the same motherboard, so definitely consult your motherboard manual for all of those switches right there. These ones look very flimsy because they're only one pin ones, but they are connected. It's just for an LED, so it should be fine. Right, so next we have HD audio. You can see those black pins. This is where the audio is meant to go on, like that. Plugs in, nice and secure. What else have we got? We've got USB. There are no USB 3s, so it will just pop onto any of these blue USB 2 points. So move this along, we'll connect it to this one down here. These cables are really annoying. Let's get those in. Okay, that's the USB. And is that everything? No, there's one more cable hiding in here, and it is a SD. But yeah, this one's an SD card reader, which there is one on the top of the case, which could be quite handy, I guess. To be honest, it looks, yeah, it's the same as a USB actually, so it will connect to one of these USB connectors, like so. Alright then, so that's all of our little extras. You can see cable management is breaking down very rapidly, but there's not much I can do about that on this case. But anyway, that is all of those connected. So we'll now move on and we'll connect the power and the power and the power and the power, because that's pretty much all there is. Come over here. Now I'm gonna have to twist it on like that, and it will just plug in. You got to push it in quite hard because it's pretty firm. It's 24 pins, so you got to make sure that's plugged in right, because that is our main power to the whole board right there. And once that is in, we have to move over up here, and you can see up there is a 4-pin connector, and that 4-pin connector is for the CPU power. Okay, that's it in there. So that 4-pin was ridiculously stiff, but that 4-pin there powers the CPU, so that's our CPU power. It will be possibly, I mean, I've not seen a 6-pin CPU power because I've not had a board like that, but I know you probably can get 6-pin ones. You definitely get 8-pin on more powerful motherboards. But yeah, this is a small UTX form factor motherboard, so it only takes a 4-pin CPU power, and that's it. Power is installed. So in terms of cable management, we've actually not done a terrible job. I mean, if the case had more cable management room, we could have done a lot better, because it's a complete mess down here, and I do not deny that. I might be able to use cable ties to tidy it up a little bit, but overall this main bit is fine. There's no cables getting in the way of fans, so far so good on that. But yeah, it's not bad in the middle section, but down the bottom it's a complete mess, and at the top it's a little bit of a mess, but that's what happens when there's no cable management room. Alright, so here we are, graphics card installation. Get our graphics card out. So, massive. These things are huge. I love graphics cards, they're just massive. It's like putting a computer in a computer. Because it's got its own, you know, it's got its own processor really, and RAM and everything built on here. So we've got two 90mm, are they 90mm fans? They look bigger than 90mm fans, to be honest. But anyway, two big fans. Just peeling off the plastic. Massive heat sink. So here we go. I'm gonna pop it in. So it attaches to our blue PCI Express slot here. There's a lock for the card that locks that in place, and then it'll have to be screwed on the top there as well. So there's just enough room in this case for the card. So length is an issue. I didn't go over graphics card length in the first part, but that is something you have to take into account. But even if it wasn't long enough, it's just this bay bit at the side. You could always put it in at an angle as long as it's got enough space at the back, and we'll be fine. So here goes. I'm gonna make sure that that's gonna slot in right. Which it would appear to be. And the PCI lock just locks in place. And that's in. Right, so now it needs to be screwed in and then power attached. It takes an 8-pin and a 6-pin connector. There's another, I mean, most 7870s, which is this card, 7870 Double Dissipation Edition, most 7870s take two 6-pin connectors. This one takes an 8-pin and a 6-pin, so I'm not sure the reason for that. Could just be for the bigger fans or something, but yeah. Usually it's only two 6-pins, but in this case for some reason 6-pin and an 8-pin. Alright guys, last stage, the connectors. So we got the 8-pin and 6-pin. 6-pin, just tuck over and plug in. 8-pin, same thing. And our graphics card's connected. So that is the whole system built really. That is everything. So that is that. What we'll do, lift it up here. Alright, so what we're going to do next, in the next part, is we're going to install the operating system. I'm going to put Windows 7 64-bit on it. Not Windows 8. I hate Windows 8, I'm sorry. I know it's newer, but I hate it, and Windows 10 is a beta, so I'm not going to bother putting that on. Windows 7, because I like Windows 7, so that's going on there. And so we'll install the operating system in part 3, and we're also going to configure it so that it boots quicker on the SSD, and so that we may do a rundown on some games or something to see how well it performs. And that'll be part 3. So thank you guys for watching. Go ahead, like the video if you liked it, comment if you have any questions, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Go check out part 1 if you haven't seen it already, which shows how we went about ordering all the components and figuring out that they would fit together and they would be compatible with each other. So go ahead and watch that. If you want to see me building my own computer, because this one, like I say, is a budget PC for a friend that I will be sending him. But my own personal computer that I use, I did a build of that in another video, which will also be linked on screen right now. So go check out those videos if you want, and if you don't, then thanks for watching this one, and I will see you guys next time.